Well, thanks for squeezing this in. I appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Yeah. Can you talk about what you're working on that brings you to
this is a project for direct television. I did a writing project for them earlier in the year, a thing called Full Circle, and I wasn't involved in the production of that, just in the creation, the writing of it.
Uh-huh.
So this was something we talked about doing, another project, and what we came up with was a series of 10 short films, and what I offered them was the idea of doing something called 10 by 10, which is 10 different stories by 10 different actors, kind of long performance pieces, so the shot all in one take and in black and white.
Uh-huh.
And so we're shooting 5 of them here in New York and 5 in Los Angeles.
Oh, neat.
And so we're just at the very end of the first 5. That's the project that I'm currently working on.
That's awesome. It's one actor primarily, I guess primarily.
Right, yeah, straight to the camera.
Like who might be today, for instance? Does anybody know?
Today better be Judith Light, or we're not going to have anything to do.
I think I saw her in the lobby.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's who it's supposed to be.
Okay, Judith.
Uh-huh. And it's been a variety of people. Jenna Fisher was here the other day, and Fred Weller, and
nice.
Louisa Krause, Richard Kind we did yesterday out in Queens.
Yeah.
At a machine shop. So it's just a mix of
great.
Men and women.
That's fun. It sounds fun.
It's been fun. Yeah, it's a nice black and white is something you just don't get to use very often. I've only used it the last couple of years. I've done a couple of short films that have black and white, and this project's in black and white. So it's nice to see something like that.
It must have a different kind of conversation, right, about when you're shooting in black and white, I guess.
Yeah, it's a shorter conversation usually.
Yeah, it's far fewer colors.
Fewer colors and
but there's a palette anyway.
Oh God, yeah, it's amazing. It can turn out just a very drab gray, or it can be a beautiful kind of real stark black and white contrast, and that's kind of what we're going for here.
Not drab.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You really have to be careful about, because it's a solid, singular, unmoving frame. That one picture is very important. So you spend a lot of time saying, what is the backdrop? What's going to happen? Am I going to put smoke in this? Am I going to, that little fan we could have moving. There's a blank television behind us. Let's put something on that. Yeah. You have all those conversations that you would have for a film, but the range is limited because there's essentially one picture. But we're being very careful with those because you're going to look at that picture for 10 minutes, and you don't want it to not work in relation to the person who's sitting there trying to tell you a story. So it's the same. It's also a guy I've worked with a number of times. He shot Some Velvet Morning and 2 or 3 other projects. So your conversations are quicker because you know each other, and
you have shorthand.
They're still the same conversations.
Yeah. And is it kind of like an anthology series to it? That kind of is there a through line that is there?
There's a through line certainly in the way we're doing it. Certainly in the nature of it being these 10 confessional stories. There's no direct correlation from person to person. Full Circle had an obvious sort of daisy chain effect from one character to the next. They were connected in some way. Here, there's no conscious work on my part to say, here's the other side of that conversation, or I hear them reference that person who must be the person I heard 2 weeks ago. So there's none of that. It's really just 10 very different stories, sort of 5 age groups from 20s to 60s, a man and woman in each of those age groups.
Right.
But other than that, there's no real sense of this person will carry us from A to B, and then the next one.
Right. It just sounds very liberating way of approaching, work. I mean, I don't know if you feel I think this is your first real TV series or project for
where I've been able to see it all the way through. Yes,
Okay.
Full Circle was one of the first things I wrote that was on television. I actually directed some television this past summer. I worked on the AMC series Hell on Wheels. I
Oh,
directed a couple
right, that's
episodes
right.
of that.
Yeah. I think I saw that.
And I don't know that I ever would have done it, except that it was a Western, and I really loved the idea of working on something like that. And it's so rare, the opportunities of being able to do that.
Right. Yeah.
There's one on the air, you know, anywhere in the world that I know of. So that was really the draw. But it was a great group of people, and AMC were very cool people.
Yeah, well, they've been having a good go lately, haven't they?
They have.
Yeah. So, Some Velvet Morning, I know we had a couple of screenings in Tribeca last spring, and it's now finally getting to New York here theatrically and on demand. And how's that feeling for you? Is you looking forward to that?
I am. It's it's become, even just in my short lifetime of my lifetime's actually not getting very short. It feels like it's long now, but the work lifetime, the time that I've been doing films or theater, the way in which material gets into the hands of people is changed, very evolved, some would say, or devolved in a matter of years, and ultimately, whatever it takes to get your material into people's homes or onto their watches
head.
Now.
Into
people are watching it on their phones, which is a weird concept. I mean, for this project, this is probably the best film that I've done in terms of being able to watch it on your Samsung. But it's certainly no easier and no doubt harder to attract people if you crack open the theater listings anywhere or a Time Out, or I don't advise looking in Time Out, but I'm not bitter. I think that it's obvious that a person living in New York who even has the opportunity to go see so much art in various mediums hardly knows where to turn. It's almost more frustrating to be here, to go. Even if I had all the time in the world, I can't physically get to everything.
Right.
It's almost better to plan your little trip for 5 days and go, I'm going to see this and this and this, and then I'll go home happy, as opposed to, can't get into Betrayal, never make it over there to see that. Oh, I missed that. That was on Thursday.
Yeah.
That's almost more frustrating. But to then throw yourselves, with a small movie out into that marketplace and say, I hope everyone goes and sees it, is a little unrealistic. But the fact that it's at least out there, and all you can really hope for is that you find the audience it deserves. That a few people find it in the theaters, because it's still a great place to go.
Of course,
see something. It's
up
on a screen.
Yeah, well, of course, and it's interesting. It's true. I think maybe if you started with In the Company of Men and was late.
Friends and Neighbors came after that in like late 90s.
Okay, so it was So it's really been through the trajectory of this whole wild period of time you've been there. For me, I'm fascinated by VOD and all of that. I think it's a great thing on paper. I know nothing about the mechanics of it. Mm-hmm.
If anyone's actually making money and all. Someone is, obviously, or they would stop immediately.
Yeah,
it's just the way those things go. They go, look, no money in this.
Right.
Let's frack instead.
And the decision to, for instance, release Some Velvet Morning, for instance, 3 days before the theatrical, as opposed to the same day or 2 weeks after the theatrical premiere date. Those decisions, you kind of just you assume
have
they're experts out.
Virtually nothing to do with.
Yeah. Understood. Right.
Yeah.
And is it even something you want to?
I suppose.
Get into that level of
you
detail.
Fancy yourself at least smart enough to be in on the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and it's weird when you've been in command of the thing, whatever size ship it's been,
right.
Whether it's this size or it's $200 million, they put you in charge of these things right up until they decide to make the poster, and then they go, oh, you couldn't have any idea what that should be like. Yeah. We're not even going to show you the poster. We're geniuses at posters, or when we're going to release it, or that sort of thing. And what you learn over the course of however many years is no one's a genius. No one really knows anything, and there's a lot of luck and a lot of hard selling, and you get lucky sometimes, and things go great, and other times things disappear, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it was good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply that was that weekend, and now they put so much emphasis on one weekend. And I think that's one thing that this half-life of then going out and being a part of the the video world or these other revenue streams. It's always something they call that connected to money. It's a revenue stream. It's whatever they call it has some allusion back to we'll make some money off of this. But in that idea, the idea that if I think about the way I grew up and so many movies that I couldn't see, I either had to travel across the state to go see them in a bigger city, or they just wouldn't exist. I'll find them someday on Turner Classics, or once DVDs started getting made, you hope that they got put out on DVD. But none of that existed. And to think, okay, I would open the New York Times at the library or when I was in college and go, oh, look at all the stuff playing there. That's great. If I could hear that, you know what, you want to see it a couple days ahead of those folks in New York, it'll be on your television.
Yeah.
Pretty much right up next to Flight. I would have considered that. It's one of those great air conditioning, space travel. Space travel would be like fourth or fifth for me. I could care less about space. Going and seeing a movie at home, that's sort of in the zeitgeist at that moment, or some, the kind of thing I wanted to see, but just I'm geographically thousands of miles away. That sounds like a great thing, and I'll pay $15 to do that. So I think it's a great idea, and you're not losing any audience. You might be losing a few people in the cities that film plays in who go, I'll stay home and watch it instead.
Yeah.
But I don't think in reality, I think the audience is only expanding with the additional ways in which they can find their way to a movie.
But it's interesting because the same conversation that let's say it's great to have the option of VOD because those guys that are living elsewhere, not in New York City or LA or a handful of other cities, they have this VOD or digital. Now iTunes and all the other digital platforms, they have that option, but it's the same. It's the other side of the same issue because it's the very thing that discourages and disincentivizes people from opening an art theater. There's just no money into it. So it would be nicer if there was like an art cinema in every town or close enough where you could go and see these things. But there's no reason to open it.
I think that still remains impractical.
Yeah.
It's a quaint idea that we love to go gather in the dark and watch these things bigger than life. That's how they've kind of become lore that way, that we go and we're enveloped in them. And I agree, it's a wonderful thing. And I think there are still movies. I saw a movie recently called The Great Beauty. It's an Italian film.
Yeah. Sure,
and that was a film that I felt like, that felt great being in the theater and kind of like saturated with those images.
Yeah.
But I don't feel a huge amount will be lost by watching Velvet on some other format.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of films like that.
Not to say, by the way, that you created it with that in mind.
No, not at all. You still love the idea, and it was fantastic at a festival. And that's going to be great during whatever period the film is out there to have that option to see it that way.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think the experience is ruined by seeing it. It becomes proportionate. The closer it gets to my BlackBerry screen, the less I think I would enjoy it. But there is a happy medium there somewhere. Your television screen, even a laptop, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But the idea of an art house in every city, even then, rotating, if they have one screen and they're rotating a movie a week, that's only 50 films. There are so many films out there that would not get on that screen.
Right.
And I would much rather have seen them or had the opportunity to see them than to go, well, they weren't in the 50 that came to my city.
Yeah.
So it still remains, I think, a really viable way to see, in particular, a kind of film, a lot of films from other countries and or out of the independent movement that aren't relying on the kind of bombast of the spectacle that an Avengers or a tentpole movie today says we're going to throw that 3D huge experience at people. That's part of the glory of this thing, glory in quotes as far as I'm concerned, but that's part of what we're selling is that experience as opposed to here's a small chamber piece about 4 people. I think that experience can be enjoyed on a smaller format.
You grew up in, for some reason I'm thinking New Jersey, but you didn't grow up in New Jersey, did you?
No, not at all. I was born in Detroit, and then I moved at a young age to Washington State.
You mean still as a teenager or something like that? Or?
No, like a 3-year-old.
Oh, okay. Did your parents?
I mean, I was
were
a
they
very
upset
adult
with you?
3-year-old.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I probably didn't come off like a teen very often.
Oh, so your family relocated to the
my mother
Pacific
was
Northwest.
My mother was from there. She was from Idaho, so we were very close to their. We were more, basically resituated ourselves near her family as opposed to my father's family, which was Michigan. So we made that. They, in fact, my parents had met in Idaho, gone back to Michigan for a few years, and then we all moved to Idaho when I was not even in school yet.
Okay, but were your parents? Was your mom or one of your parents? Were they into films? Were they? I mean, who was it that kind of
movie watchers in their own way?
In their own way. I mean, you grew up in the 70s.
Yeah, so we would pile into the car and go to a drive-in sometimes. I would see a certain kind of film with my father and a certain kind of film with my mother. Like my mother would go. There was a revival house. I guess it was pretty much. It wasn't always a revival house. Mm-hmm. But it would play certainly bigger revivals and hold pictures for like the opposite of what you're describing, like for a year, And
sure, yeah.
And then back in that period, there was movies would sit in the theater, even in New York for a long time. So Billy Jack would break their local record of like being in there for a year.
Oh, that was a huge movie. Yeah.
Romeo and Juliet or
Zeffirelli, I mean.
Yeah, Fiddler on the Roof, that kind of thing would play there. But revivals would come through, and she took me to Gone with the Wind there, and that's right. Whereas my father would be like, let's go see Papillon. Mm-hmm. If it has Steve McQueen, that was let's go see that.
And
one.
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah,
so
Dustin Hoffman was
a little
suspect
ethnic.
to him. He's not so interesting. I hope he dies early. Much to his chagrin.
In the film, let's just stipulate what you meant by
that. not early in his life.
Yeah.
But
interestingly enough, he's outlived Steve McQueen by decades.
He certainly did. Yeah. So that was the kind of experience I had. Watching a lot of, I watched a lot of films with my father on television, westerns, war films. Those pictures he was drawn to. So I would see a lot of that at home on television, but no one was very highbrow about anything like that at all. And theater was never a part of our life, or literature really. It was mostly self-discovery, that kind of thing.
So where did the psychological aspect of your storytelling? Where did that? Where was the inspiration? Or
I guess that's what I was picking up on in whatever picture I was seeing.
I see
that. Portion of it interested me, whether there was
because it was there in John Ford westerns as much as it is in anything else, right? Or
sure, yeah. I mean, if you watch The Searchers, you can find anything you want.
Yeah,
you can just watch Scar running around and attacking people, or you can pick up on this revenge tale and really see some deep rooted, interesting psychological characters there. So. I think that was just something that seemed to interest me in those stories that were being told. And I also, I was watching, when I was relatively young, there was a PBS station locally that would, I think on Friday nights maybe, play a kind of international cinema.
Yeah.
They had a kind of a weird, like, international cinema 101. Back when you could call them foreign films. And people didn't take any offense.
So like Bergman,
you would get one Bergman and one Fellini and one
I remember
that sort of thing, and I remember gobbling that up.
Really,
I would see Alexander Nevsky one week, and I would see Wild Strawberries, and whether I totally understood them or not, I whatever was different about that, I really liked it.
In the language of cinema, I guess. It sounds lofty, but it was
today,
still you were
digesting.
The
sound of I'll put a foreign film on quicker than I must say international movies from another country. I'll put that on
non-American films
in the background at home, and have that language going. The sound of it is nice. It's like having jazz on.
Yeah.
And those images and all of that. So those were very intoxicating, and so that was attractive to me. And then from there, you start seeking those things out on your own. As soon as you get to college, they have where I went. They had a great international cinema, program that was pretty well, not just well attended, but handled, thoughtfully. So it was curated in a way that this was going. There was kind of thematic themes through it. There's Scandinavian films this weekend, and next weekend, because it's getting close to Halloween, we'll do Nosferatu and Vampire and stuff like that. And so I started, once you have access to things, you start gobbling them up. And so it was just a step-by-step process that led me to where I am now.
Yeah, I do. I guess I do remember that period as well. My parents were watching the same films, but I also remember on PBS there were a lot of Japanese films too. I just have a memory of like I don't know if they were all Kurosawa, for instance, but they were definitely of that period of samurai movies. Many of them were being made. I kind of feel a little bit guilty because I've not been talking about Some Velvet Morning maybe enough, but. We do.
It's more fun to talk about samurai movies.
Yeah, I guess. But there is, Stanley Tucci is something of a warrior.
As good a segue as I've ever heard. Yes.
But and it's interesting. I also saw him on stage here in the city a few years back when he did Frankie and Johnny at the Claire de Lune. Did you get to catch that?
I didn't see him in that, but I know. I mean,
with Edie Falco,
he had to be pretty fearless in that because it's pretty much like a naked opening, as I recall.
Yes,
and that's the thing about Stanley. He's such a good-natured, friendly fellow, and very charming and effortless, sort of in the way he approaches life. But he's a really fearless performer. And he's a director, and so you get a lot when you get him on set. You have a guy who thinks in kind of the micro and the macro.
Does he push you in a way?
Of course. I mean, in only the best way. I don't mind being pushed that way. Some people just don't like being questioned. Don't like there's an insecurity that's masked by a bravado often for people who are in a position of having to make decisions, and they hate to have those decisions questioned or. They want to think they've got the only answers. Mm-hmm. That's just not the way I operate. And so Stanley brings something to the table and has great thoughts or says, why is this doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to him, there's every chance it's not going to make sense to half the audience. Mm-hmm. So you have to sit down and say, let's figure this out. I mean, you don't have to. You can create chaos or get upset or laugh about it and not answer the question. All those things sort of don't lead you further down the process, because the question will come up again, or that person, even if they don't say something, will ultimately feel like you're slighting them. You're not collaborating with them in the way that I believe that you should. So you kind of have to embrace that and say, may the best idea win. I come in. My job seems to be to come in with an idea, come in with a way in which to approach a scene, or approach the character. And if his idea is better, we should probably go with that. And that has seemed to serve me relatively well with a very, so far, diverse and talented group of people. Rare has been the person who I've had difficulty with because I think they sense that I'm interested in what they do. I like what they do. I don't do it. I'm not going to try and make them do it my way. Mm-hmm. I'm not one of those directors who hires better-looking versions of themselves and then tries to talk that person into acting as if they were acting. It's about I'll get you to here with the script and my idea and create a cocoon for you to work in, and now you do the rest. Mm-hmm. Audiences come to see you. The small group of people who come to this film will hopefully they'll want to see what I've done and maybe have seen something else, but a lot of them will see Stanley's picture. Sure. Or they'll see Alice and they'll go, oh, right. I've seen her in something. She's pretty. Oh, she was in that Star Trek movie. I want to see what she does.
Yeah.
They are the conduit to an audience. That's who we see them all the time. They're on magazines, and we watch them tear up in a movie, and we go, oh, gosh, I like them so much. And that's why we go back and see what they do the next time.
Absolutely. Some Velvet Morning, it's going to be on demand starting Tuesday the 10th, I think, and then in theaters on Friday.
Yes, a certain number December. Of theaters, and certainly in New York, and then spreading out
thereafter.
Yeah, weirdly, one of the weirdest things is that it's ultimately never, at this point, booked to go to Los Angeles, which...
It is or it's not?
It's not.
Oh.
And Los Angeles, to me, was always, having worked there a fair amount, was always where I would spend a lot of time and see a lot of films like this or films from other countries. But I think, and certainly this applies to films that are on demand, day-and-date films or films that are released slightly before, they become of less and less interest to those
theater owners. Yeah, sure.
And it's a shame, because there's it's one of those things you wish the option existed for people to go see it on the screen in a place where you at least know there's a lot of people gathered who apparently want to make films, But I think less and less people want to make Bergman films, and more of them want to make Ron Howard films. You know what I mean? And it's not like a either end of the pole. It's not a disparaging comment. I like Ron Howard, and yet he's he's someone that you can say there's a guy who's made a lot of movies for studios and and films that are of a certain kind of genre. Although he's bounced around through many genres, he's just sort of embraced the bigger, bolder, crowd-pleasing aspects of.
Well, he kind of also,
that.
I mean, in a way, he was also. He's been around for making movies now for like 35 years or something.
That's the thing,
and he's kind of created that road
that,
with.
And he started with Roger Corman. You couldn't be much more independent.
It's shocking, but it's right.
So, but I think fewer people, go. So few people are now interested in what happened at Cannes. Even in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Unless they're movies at Cannes, they're like, a year later the Palme d'Or winner comes out and 4 people are in the theater. Yeah. It's just not about that. It's all about some other aspect of it. If you've based yourself there and you say I want to work in that system, you're not trying to do a film that's quite as personal as somebody else might be doing. So while I was surprised, I guess I can follow the trail and go, oh, I see how this is not happening now. I see how a movie can actually miss playing in one of the biggest cities in the country.
Yeah, which is bizarre, but it's but you're here in New York. Are you doing any appearances while you're on Friday? Or
Friday and Saturday, I'm doing a Q&A. I think somewhere in Village East or something like that.
Okay.
And
it's very strange. I have been called about it, and
isn't that weird?
Who's gonna
left out?
I don't get. It must be in my email.
I'm just probably if you trace it back in
I'll figure
the
it
junk
out.
pile.
I'll be
you'll
there.
find
Don't
it.
worry about it.
That is a slightly chilling quality to it. Oh, don't worry, I'll be there.
Yeah. Yes, it's supposed to.
I'll be in the dark. I'll be questions.
Well, I'll be there. Make no mistake. Well, again, thank you and for making time for us. And did you have a wild card round question, Betty?
Oh heavens!
All I wanted to hear about is the TV show. Can't wait to see it.
That's it. So
I might have to download it though illegally. I wonder how you feel about that because I've been waiting for it for so long.
I don't feel great about the unleashed. Yeah, I'm not big on that on the whatever Napster version of movies or.
Yeah. Well, it will come out.
I think it does come out eventually on other formats. You'll have to do that old-fashioned thing of waiting. It's so quaint these days to see someone who actually can wait for something in this, instantaneous world we live in.
Right.
But I think that, it's like now to think back that even a few years ago we used to wait like 6 months for something to come out on DVD.
Yeah.
People can hardly believe that that's the way it used to be. But I think it's one of those things that after DirecTV gets because that's sort of the wave of what's going on now is with television that now people are having binge viewing and they're trying to find new ways because so many people are Amazon's creating new content. So many people are
right. Everybody's kind of trying to jockey and figure out like what's going to come out.
That's why something like what I'm doing here even exists.
Yeah,
is that DirecTV is looking at saying what can we do that. Not just ABC, but HBO won't really do. You know what I mean? They don't want to do black and white and people talking to the camera, so we'll do it. And some of our viewers will appreciate it. And since we have so many viewers, because we're DirecTV and we're like one of these monopolies of cable companies, we can do something interesting.
We're content creators now.
and they say it and then they do it. And I have to admire that they've twice now gone to bat on formats that you would kind of have people raise their eyebrows about and say, wait a minute, you're not going to have a regular cast and now you're going to do these things where people just talk. God bless them. They've been smart enough to say, what, that seems interesting to me. So, I'm on the ride with them and I like what they're, that they have the guts to do it.
I can't wait myself. Then we'll have to. Well, we'll wait 6 months, get it on Hulu Plus or whatever.
She'll steal it for you. Don't worry. She'll.
All right. Well,
reviews are already everywhere. So.
Neil, thank you again, and I appreciate it. We pushed a lot, and you were very
my pleasure,
warm and friendly and
love being pushed around. Thank you.
Count on me, and we'll.
And obviously, I'll see you on the weekend.
Haunting
theaters near you.
A little bit of the stalking going on.
That's all right.
Wish you a lot of luck with Some Velvet Morning and with the new series. It does sound great, and
Thank you.
That's it. We'll let you get back to your work here. All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.